Yeah, so are you okay? Can you go into this difficult conversation about more than 40 years of your work in 15, 20 minutes? But I would like to start somehow connecting how you entered the field of your work for which you are awarded and where we are now today. More than 30 years ago, so 35 years ago, the Berlin Wall fell. And people from the former socialist countries, we still have to answer these kind of questions around Eastern Europe as something closed, homogeneous identity. And because, as it was mentioned already in the jury argumentation for your this selection, in your work, in your writing and also curatorial work, you always emphasize the importance of contextualization, of the subtle differences, of subtle, nuanced reading of art from the Central and Eastern Europe, so of local and regional specificities. So I would like to ask you how difficult it is actually to compete with this subtleness against these pervasive stereotypes that we still have to keep on responding and answering.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. After this music portrait, it is so difficult for me. Okay, I just loved it. That was so wonderful. And I forgot to tell now, I'm pulling together myself, that also not just culture of appreciation, not just engagement, but rituals and these warm celebrations are also something which pulls us together. Okay. So the short question is, it's very difficult. It's very difficult nowadays because we were already speaking what kind of dark time we are living. And one of the characteristics, I think, of these dark times is that there are no shades, but there are just black and white, evil and good. And this is, I believe, not just a question for art history, but the whole society starts to work in this way. So I believe that it is very, very, very difficult now to use this method, but still we have to as a counter force against this simplification and which is very, very dangerous if we cannot get into this in-betweenness and give the, let's say, 50 shades of the gray.
So in one of your texts, you wrote that you are interested in actually writing about art in a way that it addresses international community, that facilitates communication and not reinforces separation. But if we were learning now about your work as the one emphasizing differences and specificities. So can you tell us briefly about your way of approaching art, understanding art, that it doesn't reinforce the differences and separation, but actually searching for connecting points and exchange and communication?
Yes, it was written quite long ago, I believe, in the dialogue, Igor Zabel dialogue, and in 2016. And that time, the question, I wanted to make a genealogy about what East Central European art history wants. And in this genealogy, I wanted to show all those phases that in different times, what are the main priorities. And yes, And now I would, that time it was very important to emphasize this international collection because a lot of countries started to rewrite local national art histories, and they were very busy with that. So that time it was about art history. And after the crisis of art history, because somehow remained alone in this ivory tower and not communicating with other disciplines, it became a little bit a bigger issue that art history somehow can get off from the ivory tower and take, for example, into consideration all the other disciplines which were quick to respond to actual problems. And for example, art history was a little bit lost when visual studies appeared on the scene. So even within this discipline, art history still tried to keep its, let's say, elitist, aristocratic position. So I would extend this need for getting out from this bubble and somehow communicating more with the outside field. And especially now, because we are so flooded with images and they are so very powerful. So the task of art historian somehow to get off from the tower and explain and make understand the images. And this is especially important because the power, the official power, they take a very good use of images and visuality. So,
okay, thank you. I would like to relate also to one of the emphases in the jury statement where they point on your critical analysis of post-socialist condition as well as nationalism and populism. So I'm wondering, is this for you, for your understanding, the necessary connection between these phenomena, or how do you actually understand post-socialist condition?
Yes, this is a very good question. And I believe they are very strongly and absolutely connected. And the reason is, I would come from today, that there is a tendency today that there is this word system theory which would allow us to think that, okay, there is a blank page and we are now marinated in the same juice, all of us. So we do not have to think, we do not have to deal anymore with this socialist past, but this is a blank page, and we are struggling with the same problem. I simply do not believe in it. And the reason is that we are not arriving empty-handed to the scene like innocent, naked people, but we carry luggages. And we carry from socialism and from history before very heavy luggages. And this luggage somehow influences our participation or our reaction. And I would say that we cannot get rid of that. And we have to take into consideration what kind of luggages we do carry. And we are maybe we are in the same struggle, but from a different point of view, and as I said, with heavy luggages.
Mm-hmm. So let's stay with the heavy luggage for a while. The recently published Czech translation of your writings in the first part of the book titled Art on the Ruins of Socialism, you analyze, you write about artistic practices from the 90s and early 2000s in connection with the concepts, notions of cultural trauma and therapy. So I would like to ask you how you read art in between trauma and therapy.
So it was in the time when everybody wanted to get rid of the memory of socialism and happily get rid of that. And this is actually connected to the previous question, that it always comes back with vengeance if you do not go through, if we do not speak about, if there are these suppressed feelings, there are taboos we do not speak about. And especially everybody was eager to get rid of that. And then actually, there were artists who raised the question, and not theoreticians, or especially not politicians. They raised the question that we have to go back and remember what did happen and cope with this feeling of immediately change the situation. And sometimes if this mourning or this bereavement is missing, then different symptoms will appear, and they will find a way for them to appear as psychological symptoms. And it is absolutely the same in society, like for a traumatized person. And it was many theories that time. Then some of them, for example, dealt with the shock as a traumatic effect, or others to getting back and face and confront with all those tensions and all those conflicts, to be able simply to handle new kind of conflicts. And especially when we were speaking about in the seminar about the regions, because our history is so turbulent, sometimes there is no time to digest or to mourn something which happened. And I could say this is something similar to that of course on a different level, but for example in Holocaust studies they are speaking about the second and third generation who are carrying the trauma differently than those who survived the first generation, but still you cannot get rid of. You cannot get rid of this, and the best way to speak about it, to not to treat it as taboo, and working through. That is why I did find it very important that time, and when it's missing, or we have to pay a price for it.
So how to work through to the new conflicts that you also mentioned in the second part of this book. The second part is called Art on the Peaks of Nationalism. You write about the period after 2010 when Viktor Orban took power, and about art practices that are critically responding to authoritarian nationalist regime. Some of those artworks that you write about in this book, you also included in some of the exhibition projects that you curated and co-curated. So could you share with us or try to summarize what has happened in these last 14 years to the cultural landscape in Hungary?
Oh my God, this is a huge question. 14 years, so it is
Just to give us somehow an understanding, because here in Slovenia, recently we had a briefer period maybe of shared experience. Currently we are observing what is happening in Slovakia. So also from the perspective of colleagues, working in similar conditions now or recently, what was your actually learning lesson from what is happening in Hungary in the last period, and how to respond to that?
Yes, so in the book, not in the Czech version, but in the original Hungarian, because the Czech version is a compilation of two books. One was published in 2009, and the other one was published recently. And when I got this wonderful commission that they would like to publish it in Czech, then I suggested that that book was published long ago. So, and now I'm writing the second one. And they said that, okay, then publish the second one. But okay, but then you cannot understand which way would lead to the second one. So let's merge them together. But this heavy cultural, political stuff I have to leave out. But in the Hungarian version, I did find a metaphor which actually, when I realized that there is a coincidence, intrigued me. And this was the close encounter of the third kind. My generation would remember the Spielberg movie, right? And actually, this, as it written in ufology and in this third encounter, that at the first, the alien appears on the scene and just looks around. Alien, in our case, is the official cultural policy and the government. Just looked around. That time, we had a lot of interview about whether there is a cultural politics, whether we should worry about, oh no, it's nothing. They do not know what to do. They do not have a concept. Okay. Then the second phase of the close encounter in the Spielberg movie is the physical remnants. This is what happened in Hungary because the regime started to build monuments and memorials and take over the public space. The third phase is the actual encounter. And this was the total invasion. So I will go back to your question. Now I did find myself. And this is the close encounter. And the Spielberg movie ends at the third encounter. And I added an appendix, the fourth encounter, because some of this is apocryph. This is apocryph. Some ufologists said that there is the fourth encounter as well. And this is the total invasion. So this is what happened. And it's very interesting that these encounters and the governmental phases almost exactly coincided. I do not think that they wanted to make a reenactment. It just somehow coincided. And now another aspect. How did it happen and why was culture so important for them? I do not want to speak about now the political issues. It's well known, but the cultural one, okay? That this was very, very cleverly done. I have to say that devilishly cleverly. So they were not clumsy in this process. It was a very slow, step-by-step process, so you could not even notice it. It's happening. When I was interviewed, I gave this another metaphor. I like metaphors. So the metaphor that when a frog is cooked very, very slowly, doesn't even realizes that he's cooked at the end of the process. Once again, the food. And as a theoretician, one of my favorite writers, Gramsci, wrote the idea about cultural hegemony. And this is a leftist idea. He wrote this about in the prison letters in 1930. And the reason was, I will tell why it is very important. It is not just some philosophical... that when he realized that the revolutionary moment is over, and you cannot change the system from below, and the traditional Marxist thinking that the grand will define everything is over, he wanted to find a solution, how to take over the power. And then he was speaking about cultural hegemony, that you have to take the culture and then, so from above, and then you have everything. And I do not know which was first, the egg or the egg or, and who? The chicken. Yeah, egg or the chicken, but actually one of the theoreticians, who is in the background, writes about Gramsci appropriated for the far right. So this is a very dangerous and strange moment that the leftist, the most radical leftist ideas are appropriated for political and rightist end. So this is behind it, I believe, and this is, for example, a difference between socialism and this nationalist era. At that time, we knew exactly about the ideology. We knew it by heart. Now, it is not propagated, that it is Gramsci's theory put in praxis, but this is what is done. Because some interviewer asked me, what do they want from culture? Why it is so important for them? Because they realized that they have to control culture, and even it was expressed. You most probably know, absolutely know, that Orbán used to give a speech before every election in Tusványosfürdő, which is in Transylvania. It has a symbolic message, of course. And all the time, politicians and theoreticians used to analyze those texts because somehow he puts together the vision. And in 2018, I do not have the quote with me now, but it was about that after getting the political power, we have to build a cultural era which has all the elements of everyday life. So somehow they saw that, okay, we got the power, it is stabilized, now we have to build this cultural power which would disseminate all cells of the society. So in this way, all the people are like puppets or on sting.
So how to sustain, in this somehow claustrophobic, closed situation? The jury actually emphasized your engagement in facilitating support, intergenerational, intercultural, and solidarity, but also your emphasis on the importance of art and subversive power of art. So leaving this now situation in recent time in Hungary, what would be your take regarding how important and how actually to sustain and maintain and open critical spaces, but also support and solidarity?
Yes, these are very different tasks, and I do find it important to analyze, and as historians, we have to analyze the situation because it is so fast and so frightening, so somehow we have to understand. So for those who are art historians, curators, it is very important to analyze, to understand it. And as for the artists, also, for example, when we organized this, you mentioned private nationalism exhibition. A lot of people said that they understood how this nationalism works, how do they use the symbols, what is the meaning. So they could go beyond this everyday propaganda and very simplistic explanation. And artists can do that from a totally different mindset and go beyond these trivialities. And so this is one thing, this educational. And the other thing is that we already touched upon this, but we are in the time of total visuality, a very fast time. Attention is very valuable, so everybody fights for this attention. And these far-right regimes very strongly rely on visuality. We cannot underestimate that. And on the billboards and monuments, memorials, so it is very important to show and deal with the power of images and to show a counter effect. And simply because otherwise we would be seduced and sucked into this visuality. And especially this is an extra element that when there is this AI, and this is the top of the question in that meaning that it could be manipulate images. So people are totally lost in it. What is the reality? What is the virtual reality? So I believe that artists are those who could give some kind of direction in it. And yes, also there is the other part, that for example, what is happening, Ilona mentioned, in Slovakia, they would like to follow Hungary in a crash course. And it helps them a lot to see what happened in Hungary. So, and this solidarity with them, with that scene, and speak about it is very, very important, because maybe that regime will not have that wrong time that we had. So, and there are, I also believe that art has not just critical potential, but it has a lot of critical potential, and not just in direct political art. Sometimes there are artists who seemingly dealing with apolitical art, and I am totally agree with this with Igor Zabel, as just was mentioned in before, that it could be also totally political. But art can offer a lot of healing potential as well. So, and that is why, getting back to the question of trauma, art could that or assist in this working through process or coping with these shocks, many different kind of shocks.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Edith András.
Thank you very much.